Everyone seems to be packing up and heading toward the concrete at some point. We get this itch, this pervasive anxiety that we are missing out on the epicenter of existence if we aren't crammed into a massive, suffocating metropolis. You know the feeling. The belief that if you just move to the big city, suddenly your life will begin. The sheer gravity of the skyscrapers will extract your true potential. It is a beautifully convincing lie. We look at the skyline from a distance and think, there, right there in the thick of it, is where I will finally become someone. But the most counterintuitive reality of human migration is that we don't go to the city to find ourselves. We go there to hide in the noise. We go there to drown out the terrifying quiet of our own unresolved minds. It is so much easier to blame your lack of progress on subway delays than to sit in an empty room and face the fact that you do not know what you want. So we pack our bags and board the train. Henry David Thoreau saw this precise tragicomedy playing out over a century and a half ago. He watched his neighbors rushing to catch the railroad into Boston, consumed by the illusion of commerce. He realized that the city does not actually expand your horizons, it drastically narrows them. You move to the city seeking infinite possibilities, but you immediately find yourself trapped in the most mundane cycle imaginable. You trade the vast, unmonetized open sky for a tiny, aggressively expensive box. That is the core tragedy of it. You give up the natural world just to lease a fabricated enclosure. And then you spend 70% of your waking hours doing work you resent just to maintain your right to sleep in that box. Thoreau observed that men had become the tools of their tools. We invent these towering achievements of civilization to make our lives richer, and yet the average city dweller is profoundly impoverished. We are crushed under the weight of maintaining our proximity to the crowd. Look at the people on the street in a major financial district. Does any divinity stir within them? Or are they, as Thoreau put it, leading lives of quiet desperation? That phrase hits incredibly hard because it is the exact frequency of modern urban life. A sterilized desperation wrapped in a trench coat, rushing to a meeting to secure funds to pay for the apartment that houses the suit. And the advice we get is always the same. Hustle harder, network, go to where the people are. As if proximity to a million other equally confused, anxious human beings will magically cure your internal deficit. It is an absurd premise. We think society is a concentration of life, but usually it is just a concentration of friction. We live thick and are in each other's way, stumbling over one another, and we lose respect for one another in the process. We are forced to agree on 1,000 trivial rules of etiquette just to avoid open conflict. You go to the city to be free, but you immediately contract yourself into a nutshell of civility. You start caring obsessively about what kind of coat you wear, or whether your opinions align with the fashionable anxieties of the day. You become the slave of your own opinion of yourself, which is dictated by the mob. Public opinion is a weak tyrant compared with our own private opinion, but in the city, the two become indistinguishable. You cannot hear your own thoughts because the environment demands you constantly react to others. We act as if this dense existence is the peak of human evolution. We celebrate the railroad, connecting us to the core. But we do not ride on the railroad. It rides upon us. Every sleeper laid under those tracks is a human life traded for efficiency. We rush to the metropolis to consume news, terrified of being left behind. Yet, as Thoreau noted, to a philosopher, all news is just gossip. If you read of one man robbed, you never need read of another. The principle is the same. But the city addict is desperate for data because it prevents them from thinking about the absolute void at the center of their existence. We are determined to be starved before we are hungry. We live in a frantic state of preparation, upgrading our means, forgetting to define the end. Think about the sheer economics of migrating to the big city. The cost of a thing is the amount of life required to be exchanged for it, immediately or in the long run. When you move to a massive metropolitan area, the cost of a basic shelter requires an astonishing percentage of your finite life. You spend 15 to 20 years of your absolute prime biological energy just to pay for the bricks and mortar that protect you from the rain. Would a savage have been wise to exchange his simple wigwam for a palace on these terms? We look down on primitive arrangements, but the man in the simple shelter owns his time entirely. The civilized man in the city hires his shelter because he cannot afford to own it, and so he must rent out his life to cover the deficit. We have built palaces, but it was not so easy to create noblemen to inhabit them. The luxury of the city is counterbalanced by a deep, invisible indigence. The external improvements, the cafes, the theaters, the architecture, they are all beautiful, yes, but they do not automatically improve the humans who walk among them. I want you to step back and genuinely look at the absurdity of the urban dream. You pack your entire existence into a moving van. You drag this massive load of furniture, all these heavy traps you have accumulated, right into the epicenter of a concrete maze. Why do we move ever, but to get rid of our furniture? But instead, we lug it with us. We literally drag our traps behind us. The city becomes just a more expensive, more crowded location to store our psychological and material baggage. And the truly tragic part is, the city does not care about you. It does not pause to validate your arrival. It just silently absorbs you into its massive, indifferent machinery. You think you are adventuring, but you are really just submitting to a far more rigid, unyielding structure of conformity. You have to train and dress, and not to say think and believe, according to the precise coordinate on the map you have chosen. And if you rebel against it, if you try to live deliberately and simply in the midst of the chaos, you instantly become a social outcast. Society there recovers only a fraction of the individual's true worth, because the individual is so overwhelmingly busy just surviving the overhead costs of the environment. This is why Thoreau's experiment at Walden Pond remains one of the most radical counter-narratives to the great urban migration. He did not go to the woods merely to look at trees. He went to strip away the suffocating layers of society that men believed were absolutely necessary. He found that by working just 6 weeks out of the year, he could completely support his simple existence. The entire rest of the year was his own. He proved that the supposed necessities of the modern world are largely just comfortable habits that chain us to the plow. Escaping the big city trap is not fundamentally about geography. It is about a fierce, unyielding psychological simplification. The big city is an external manifestation of an internal chaos. It represents our desire to be entertained, to be validated, to be distracted from the monumental task of knowing ourselves. It is a heartbreaking fallacy of modern existence. You can be as utterly isolated and empty in the middle of a million people as you are in a desert. Tomorrow, carve out one sacred hour where you do not owe the world a transaction. Do not consume the news. Do not check your messages to see if the crowd summoned you. Go to a quiet corner of your room or a park bench no one fashionable would visit and sit there without producing. Let the absolute weight of your own existence settle around you. When the anxiety hits, and it will hit, just watch it. Let the desperate need to prove your worth to the invisible city wash over you and evaporate. Realize you are not missing out on anything real. The only genuine life is the one you sustain when the crowd goes silent.
The crowd is a river that carries you off, but the house is the rock where you land. I'm letting go of the heavy things with a tired and a steady hand, a steady hand. And the water runs clear in the basin, the blue and the red swirl away. Just the skin and the bone and the breathing, the rest was just part of the play. The basin is empty, the towel is dry, I'm finally here.